welcome to The Ancient Way. I'm James.
I'm Marlia.
And I'm Jake, the brother of James.
Brother of James.
You should have just introduced yourself as the brother of James.
That's what the theme's been lately.
Well, hey, I have a joke for y'all. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
There's 4 monks that decided to take a vow of silence. They were going to go into deep mysticism. So one of the guys lit a candle, and as they were trying to get into a deep trance, the candle went out. And one of the guys goes, "Hey, the candle went out." The second guy goes, "Hey, you just broke the vow of silence." The third guy said, "Hey, you just broke the vow of silence." And then the fourth guy goes, "I'm the only one that hasn't broken the vow of silence."
He broke it. He broke it with the...
So nobody got into a trance.
Yeah. Dang.
It's unfortunate.
Do you see how corny that is?
That was good, though. Did you make that up?
No, I heard it the other day on I was listening to a professor speak.
Okay.
An old man who led in with that joke, so...
Well, I was waiting on that last one because it's like, well, everybody said something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just like whenever Kelsey, Kyle, and I play the quiet game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what that was like.
Yeah, when you have to be quiet, it's a lot harder to be quiet, you know, when someone's expecting you to be.
Yeah.
I used to get in trouble all the time whenever, people would be praying over a meal because I'd start laughing or just something random would happen.
It's very disrespectful, Jake.
It is very disrespectful.
Yeah. I had it too. It was all through school, like elementary school, but when the teacher was talking, if it was serious, in a moment where you're not supposed to laugh, it just gets me.
Yeah, same.
It is hilarious, and we've gone over this before, I think.
Oh, yeah, like funerals?
Oh, funerals.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that.
Understand, but it just gets me, And
I can't look at you, James, whenever stuff like that, when we're in situations like that together, because if we make eye contact, it's over. It's game over. That's how it's always been.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so beside my very corny old man joke.
Good icebreaker.
Okay, just for the listeners, if you didn't capture last week's final 20 minutes?
Moments, yeah.
Of what we were talking about, we really hit on health. And I thought it was, James and I were talking about it, I think it's a good segue because what we really want to go into is talking about healing.
Right.
And the healing power of God. Anyways, so we thought it would be appropriate to have Jake on because Jake has a really cool story about being in the midst of the system and the Lord showing up. And so we're going to kind of dive into that. But is there anything else that you wanted to lead into before I have a couple of questions I want to ask Jake.
Yeah, well, he's our first guest of the season, so we have to ask a question.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Hit me.
Okay. We did Aliens last season.
Yeah.
Do you believe in life on other planets?
Yeah, there's got to be.
That's last season's though.
Oh,
You don't
okay.
get
I thought you were asking me that.
No. That's last season's. This season, I mean, I've got one. I'll just do it.
I like it. Whatever.
Okay. Do you believe in Bigfoot? And if so, what do you think it is?
I mean, we've had conversations about this, and I wasn't ever. You were always kind of on board with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I never really was, in the sense that he's some actual physical being that roams around, and there's just one of them. I think if he is real, I've always thought if it was real, it's some sort of species.
Like a tiger?
Like a tiger?
Like tigers. Like tigers are a species.
Yeah. There would be different variations of it.
Okay.
Because you hear people describe it in different ways and stuff like that.
Because you have Yetis. They're like the snow version.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, I always thought if it was real, it's not one specific being. It would have to be multiple forms of it. But, your experience you had, which I don't, have you talked about that on the podcast?
Nope,
okay,
don't go there.
Okay, I won't go there. But I'll just say this. I think Bigfoot or Sasquatch is some kind of spiritual manifestation that people see. Because another thing that we've talked about is like no one ever finds the body. It's like people say it all the time, but no one has proof of it
Right.
being real. You see footprints and stuff like that, but no one's actually killed one. There's not proof that it exists. So I don't think it's physical.
Yeah, it's like everyone's seen it. No one's found any
Right.
Remains.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yes,
That's
I do.
That's an adequate answer.
Yeah,
We can
that's
finish the
good.
podcast.
That's good.
That's all we were here for today.
Yeah.
Well, you have to pass the first test.
Yeah.
Before
which is
you
the
continue.
question.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Right.
All right. That was a good question. I'm glad you brought that in.
Yeah, it was going to happen
Yeah.
eventually.
Well, it's appropriate because we will uncover that
Yes.
later in the season.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Yes.
Jake, will you kind of share with the listeners your health journey?
Yeah.
And how that was unveiled in your childhood.
Yeah, for sure. So, growing up, I was involved in sports and stuff like that. I was living a pretty, healthy childhood. I was playing basketball and stuff like that. And it came to a point where I was in games, and I was 9 years old, and I started developing some like breathing issues whenever I was playing sports and doing anything active. And everyone kind of thought it was just asthma or it was something that would go away. Well, we end up going to the doctor for it, and turns out, long story short, it ended up being leukemia, which I didn't know about upon the immediate visit. But we were sent to Dallas to Children's Medical, and they did some further blood tests and examinations and stuff like that. And it ended up being leukemia, which is a cancer that's found in the blood. They found it in like my spinal fluid. And so that ended up being a 5-6 year journey of chemotherapy and radiation and all the different stuff, surgery and all the stuff that entails. And a lot of profound stuff happened during that time. The Lord showed up in ways that is just very, very profound and gave me a sense of reality that I wouldn't have had hadn't he done that at that age.
So on that,
Yeah.
would you say that you ever believed that the illness was from God?
No, I didn't. I never believed that the illness was from God. And I don't think illness, I actually know illness is never from God.
Because I just wanted to interject because I think that there's misconception sometimes that people will try and bring in of like, hey, I actually saw God in the midst, so clearly it must have been from him.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like if you're actually seeing the hope and the goodness in a situation, sometimes we will take on the belief that he caused it.
Or even I did something to deserve this, and he's fully allowing it and endorsing it, basically.
But it's not. That's not the case.
It's not.
No,
So
for sure. Yeah.
You were like 9.
Yeah.
Like, what was your mindset when that happened? Like, was God a part of your thought process in that?
Yes, he was. And I remember when they told me what I was diagnosed with when the doctor came in and told me, I remember I didn't cry. I didn't feel scared at all. And as a 9-year-old being told that you have cancer, you're going to be going through this 5-6 year process, and kind of giving like the statistic, like the chance of survival and stuff like that. There was a supernatural presence that came over me from the beginning of the Lord telling me, hey, you're going to be okay. And that's how I know it wasn't from the Lord. It was like, no, this is something that he's going to work through me in. And as a child, I didn't really know what that looked like, but I remember always even comforting like my parents when they would get upset and cry and be scared when the doctors would give news. There was always something inside of me, and I knew it was the Lord, that was comforting me through it. And it was like, no matter what happens, there's going to be life gained from all this, from the situation.
I love that of what you just said. And I kind of want to go more into that because it's like you should, I think in any case of illness, having childlike faith, because that's what you actually had. You had childlike faith.
Yes.
Of like, hey, this thing isn't going to touch me. And that is what is contagious
Yeah.
to people. Like you
Right.
having to comfort your parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, because you had the revelation and you had childlike faith.
Yeah.
You know, without a sliver of unbelief.
Yeah.
You know, you actually were like, no, I'm going to stand on this
Mm-hmm.
because you had the experience with him
Yeah.
in the midst of it. So what was that like? Like actually having the childlike faith and the boldness in that especially early moment when you have doctors that are giving you prognosis
Mhm.
and trying to make you partner your belief with what they're saying.
Yeah. So I think
Does that make sense how I said that?
it does. Yeah,
Okay.
the childlike faith is something that I had and kind of lost a little bit growing up, just because you get educated on stuff and you start learning the science behind stuff. But it's like as a kid, it's like you hear stuff about the Lord being good and healing, and it's like that's all I really believed. I didn't really take into account any of the other stuff. Obviously, it was scary at times, and I got super sick, and there was a lot of traumatic stuff that happened in it. But it was like I knew there was a silver lining to it, and I knew that the Lord was gonna be there. But yeah, that's something. It's like when you put the Lord as your priority, and you have faith in Him over all of the worldly stuff and all the medications and all the, the 5-step processes to get healthy and all that stuff. It's like that's where the childlike faith comes in a healthy way, to where it's like, no, I'm going to believe this despite what science says, despite what the prognosis or the diagnosis is. It's like there's a higher way that trumps all of that stuff, and obviously there's good sides to it.
You know what I think is interesting? This is just a comment, but like, I think there is, we attach so much meaning to certain words,
Yeah.
and certain meanings of those words create a deep emotional response.
Yeah.
So like, if you had never known that people died from cancer,
Yeah.
would you be so afraid of cancer
Right.
if somebody just said, oh, you have cancer?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because that's what I was even hearing when you were talking, Jake, is like the childlike faith is that you didn't have any association with that word.
Yeah.
There was no
Mhm.
emotional attachment
Yeah.
to create fear.
Mm-hmm.
But your parents had probably had experiences of maybe other people that they had known had
Mhm.
cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
and it's
so-
all over
Oh, yeah.
movies, the news, everything like that.
Yeah, there's definitely a push of be fearful of just a word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Be
And-
fearful of this concept.
Right.
And so then they attach their fear to it without fully knowing it.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting, just seeing the contrast of like you didn't have anything attached to that
Yeah.
statement.
There's no knowledge on it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
Of good and
nowadays, y'all have talked about, for sure. Y'all have talked about this too, but it's like nowadays, if you Google anything, it's like cancer. It's cancer.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
literally everything. Which, is funny. It's that the worst case
It's-
stuff comes up when you try to research something on Google.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Funny.
been turned into this secret enemy that creeps in and it doesn't care. It doesn't regard
Yeah.
anyone. It just shows up. It's
Mm-hmm.
very strange what it's been turned into.
And they don't know how I even got it or anything like that.
Oh. Always joke and say I put Pine Sol in your bottles. It's not true. Not
Yeah.
true.
That's funny though.
I think I'm going to take you to court now. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so let's keep going on this journey. So when you were in the midst of it, and there were clearly like traumatic things that were kind of going down and you
Yeah.
felt really sick.
Uh-huh.
And did you ever have that fear or any of those thoughts kind of creep in? Like, I don't know if I can keep doing it. I don't know if I can keep doing what I'm doing in this.
What do you mean by that?
And here's one thing I thought of too. Even the medication, like the chemo and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, how did you feel in that? Because
Mhm.
I remember having like really tough nights,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure it was the chemo
Oh yeah.
doing it. But
Mhm.
out of curiosity, like, what was that like?
I mean, it's indescribable. I mean, it's something I wasn't able to talk about for a while just because of some of the experiences that I had with it.
Did it feel heavy? I think
Oh,
that's what I
yeah.
was asking.
Yeah, for sure. And there were, I say that I had hope in it all. I did, but there were times where it was like, I would rather be dead than feel this pain. Just there was a lot to it, and it was like different rounds and different sections of it. Some of them were more intense than others. Some of them would put me in the ICU. There was, times where I'd have to be resuscitated, all kinds of stuff. So the pain and the sickness of it is something that I can't really describe. It literally, I mean, I was being there was just, I had to get special air conditioning units installed in the rooms that I was in. My white blood count was at 0 a lot of the times. If I ran even a low grade fever, I would have to go get admitted into the hospital.
Mhm.
So stuff like that was obviously scary at times. And just the pain and some of the side effects of the chemotherapy and the radiation and all that was scary. And it honestly, it kind of made me feel like I would never be able to become fully healthy at times. And just being out of school for a few years and not being able to be around kids my age and being taken out of sports and stuff like that, like psychologically was hard. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but the actual effects of the chemo it's something which anyone you talk to that's been on it or through it kind of says the same thing. It's just like the effects are like nothing else. Not being able to eat or take a bowel movement for 2 months, staying in the hospital for 3-4 months at a time, missing holidays. It's like, it was hard. But,
What do you feel like was the hope that kept you moving? Like the hope that actually kept your gaze of like, hey, I'm going to keep moving forward in this and I'm not going to surrender to the pain. You know what I mean? Like check out and just be like, well, now I'm done.
Well, it was one specific experience, which I kind of knew this conversation would lead into.
Mhm.
And this is another thing it's been kind of weird for me. It was weird for me to talk about for a while because it was almost like people would treat it like a party gag or something, like, oh, tell them your testimony. Yeah. Tell them you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I and it was almost like that was my identity for a while, like the cancer and just the sickness and those years. It was like that's what people were attributing to me, and that was something that I had to kind of work through.
Mhm.
But there was one specific experience, and I don't really share it unless I feel like it's necessary or I feel the Lord pushing me to. But it's what kept the hope in me. And so there was a night that I was in ICU, and I believe it was between a month and 2 months, I believe, of when I got diagnosed, and it was in that first kind of hospital stay. And I went to sleep one night and I woke up in my bed, but it felt like a kind of a out of body experience. I was in my body, but it felt like a dream, but it also felt real. You know what I'm saying? It was more real than it was a dream to me. That's the best way I can describe it. And I was laying in the hospital bed and I couldn't move. My body was kind of locked up, not in like a forceful way. I had a lot of peace. And I remember looking over at my parents and they were kind of asleep over on the hospital bed. And, I was just kind of looking around, didn't know what was going on, didn't have any control over my body. Again, it was peace. And then I saw the hospital roof open up, just split open, and this big yellow light was shining through it, and I saw a figure come down. And I knew it was the Lord. It was just like a shining silhouette of a man, and I knew who it was. And again, couldn't speak, couldn't move, was not in control of my body. He was, and he came down in front of the hospital bed, and he reached into my like sternum area and split it open. No pain, just opened it up, grabbed this yellow, like liquid like substance, which I knew what it was when he did it. And he looked at me and he closed it, and he went back up into the ceiling and it shut. And then I just went back out, just went back to sleep. It was, I didn't have any control over that either. Then I woke up the next morning and told my parents about it, and obviously they were excited about it. They were like, "Oh, that's a cool dream. Like, what do you think that was? What do you think what he pulled out of you was?" And I was like, "I think it was the cancer." I think that's what it was. Sure enough, the nurses come in and start doing blood tests and their rounds, and they came back in after the first one and said, "Hey, we're gonna take another test. We're noticing something. We just want to kind of make sure that it's legit." So after a few rounds of checking my blood, they came back and the cancer was gone. It was healed. It was completely gone, and it hasn't been in my body since. And so that's when I knew the Lord literally came down to me in the middle of the night, in my sleep, and pulled the cancer out of my body. And it hasn't shown up in any form since.
And you said that was a couple of months in, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But then you still had a process that you walked out of,
Yes.
still doing chemo,
Mhm.
and you still did radiation, right?
Yes.
After that?
Uh-huh. All that was continual for the next 5 years to keep it away.
It's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
It is.
It's
Yeah,
very
incredible.
interesting to me.
It is, and it makes you think did I even need that,
I mean, definitely made me think
Yeah.
that.
Did I even have to go through all that
Yeah.
for those years? Because that's what caused the sickness.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the cancer was gone.
It's
Oof.
the kimo and stuff, which
Yeah.
is it some type of poison, right?
It is poison.
It
Yeah.
literally kills you.
It
yeah.
comes from yeah.
I'm not saying this. This is just an interesting point I kind of wanted. What if you didn't have to go through all that pain and the turmoil?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I think about that. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think, what if, I'm just saying hypothetically, if our faith, if we really built everything in our lives around faith,
Yeah.
that it's oh no, I had this experience. Hey, I'm actually done. I won't have to keep going
Yeah,
Mhm.
for
because he
sure.
did, and there was proof
Yeah.
of just or I don't know. It's just
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's definitely a train of thought that I've gone down. And if something like that were to happen again in that situation, I feel like that's what it would be.
yeah,
That's what stands out to me is your faith and your hope, the childlike faith and hope in the midst of everything else, in the midst of
Yeah.
other people's fear,
mm-hmm.
the possibility of you dying, the medical staff, all of that. In the
Yeah.
midst of that is the core of it, priority wise, is God is with me.
Yeah.
It's the rock.
Yeah, he's the rock.
And another side of the other side of the spiritual tracks was, which I believe this was some manifestation of the actual cancer, of the actual illness. There were a few times where I got possessed by something, and James was around
Yeah.
during some of this. I would just be laying. It happened a couple times at home, and then one time in the hospital. I think it happened a total of 3 times, but I would be laying down and I would feel something coming over my body. And after the first time it happened, I was able to tell when it was coming, and I would warn someone. But the first time it happened, I was laying on the couch in my parents' living room, just laying there. And I literally felt something physically, overcoming, coming inside of my body. And it was freaking me out. And then once it was fully in, I started spazzing out and throwing my arms around and trying to hit people. I wanted to get up and get glass to stab my dad. I wanted to get objects to hurt people. I was screaming uncontrollably. They
Yeah.
literally had to physically hold me down.
Yeah.
And restrain me. And they would get an ambulance and we'd go to the hospital when that would happen. And it would normally die down during the ride to the hospital. People would be praying for me and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we would get to the doctor and we would tell them what happened, and I would end up leaving the next day because they didn't know, they didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
They
I
didn't
meant
know
to
what
ask
caused
you
it.
if they had what their explanation was for it.
They didn't have one.
Right.
They didn't have
Yeah.
any explanation for
I
it.
remember that.
Yeah.
I remember Dad and I holding you down
Yeah.
to restrain you.
Uh-huh.
And I remember it wasn't you. I could see your eyes.
Yeah.
And it was scary. And at that point in my life, I was just like, this isn't this is not normal,
Yeah.
you know? Like this
Mhm.
is something else. And I didn't fully understand, even what to do at that point. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was real. And I always wondered, we talked about it somewhat recently. I always wondered, like, are we ever going to have the conversation about that?
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that you share that. I think that's valuable.
Yeah, it's something that's another one of those things that I couldn't really mention for a
Right.
while just because it was, and I was conscious, like I remember every second of being in that, whatever that was, and it was scary. Yeah.
So you felt it from the outside coming in.
Yeah, it felt, I could feel it on my, like as it was in, it was like it was almost like a 30-second process of something
Mhm.
coming over me.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And so I would feel, I felt it the first time and then it happened. And then the next couple times it happened, I would feel it again. And
Mhm.
that's when I would call out to someone, be like, hey, I have that feeling again.
That's very similar to how I felt when I was having my seizures. Like when I had a seizure and then
Oh,
like
really?
all those, like I would start having convulsions. I could feel
Yes.
it from the outside. It felt like it outside coming in, and then I couldn't control anything.
Yeah.
Like my body just shook. Or
That was the
Interesting.
closest thing that anyone could think it was a seizure.
Mm-hmm.
But the violence and wanting to like hurt people and stuff like that and the
Yeah.
screaming and stuff
That's
like
definitely
that. It
the
was
other side of the-
similar. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was similar, I've read up on seizures and stuff like that, and some of it was similar to that.
But even that, it's like, well, I don't know. I feel myself always going, well, like instead of just stopping with, well, it's probably a seizure. Well, next step, well, why?
Yeah.
Right.
Why is your body not in alignment?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Even if it is like trauma,
Yeah.
right? And,
Yeah.
things actually can come through trauma.
Right.
I think,
Yeah, we're putting a scientific name to something that has a deeper root. It's like even, psychiatric medication. It's like you have a chemical imbalance. It's like, well,
Mhm.
good. What's the cause of that?
yeah,
Yeah.
why?
Why?
It's like, why
Yes.
can't we go one more step further?
Uh-huh.
Right.
Why
does
we're-
it stop here?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is here.
Yeah.
Some sort of chemical.
It's always
Yeah.
deeper.
right.
Yeah.
It's always deeper. If you think that, I don't know, I believe this, that your body, your soul, your spirit, everything's connected.
Mhm.
They're all intertwined.
Yeah.
They're all playing on each other or playing, like meshing with each other.
Yeah.
It's like a wave, not necessarily, like I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's interesting.
yeah, it's like, well, why?
Mm-hmm.
Was the illness opening up something?
Mm-hmm.
Was there pain that was opening up something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or was it your body processing all the trauma that you'd gone through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your body responding,
Yeah.
Because I think that happens. I think your body will physically
Yeah.
manifest internal things, because
Mhm.
I know they've proven that lately.
Yeah.
Like your muscles have memories, your organs have memories, and they hold the trauma.
Well, that's interesting.
I was talking to somebody the other day about when you cry,
Yeah.
you crying is actually you purging memories. It's you actually purging trauma out, because when you cry, your body actually is releasing the cortisol
Oh,
that's
that makes
built up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it's like, well, these physical things are happening, yes,
Uh-huh.
but there's also a release that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
I realized, like, even my seizures and whatever, like, it was actually full-blown panic attacks
Yeah.
that I was having because my body was releasing so much trauma
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know it,
Yeah.
because I had harbored so much of it
Yeah.
and pressed it down, and, and then it just kind of purged out.
Huh. I've always found it interesting what you just said, like in the process of it happening. I guess when you're aware that it is happening, that moment is very interesting to me, because that's an immediate, fear-based or faith-based moment right
Mhm.
there.
Oh,
Like
it's
I-
the valley of decision.
Right, but it's immediate, and it's like,
Mhm.
where do you stand on it?
Yeah.
And I know that if you fear-based decision, which it's difficult in that moment, definitely, but when it does that, it amplifies the panic.
Yeah.
It feeds it. But
100%.
there is a place, there is the contrast to it. Even me, like, I got stung by a wasp.
Oh, yeah.
and my hand swelled up like a softball. It was incredible. Couldn't get through a sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've noticed, if I ever do get stung or bit by something and have an allergic reaction to it, if I scratch it or if I get concerned about it, it grows.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't, and I just like keep doing what I'm doing, go about what my intention is to do that day, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's like the fear itself is causing
The belief and what you side with.
what you side with. Yeah.
I mean, we could go on a chemical road if you want to on that.
We can go down it. Yeah, I have no clue.
Because when you are, as soon as you hit fear, right, your
Mhm.
body dumps adrenaline, cortisol. You're gonna get me lying. It starts with an N. Anyways, but there's chemicals that are released that actually causes more inflammation to happen.
Mhm.
Like that physically is what goes down.
Yeah.
It opens the door for it
Uh-huh.
to flow through it.
Yeah. And so of course it's going to get bigger
Right.
because you're literally having chemicals that are fueling it to grow.
Yeah.
Which I think is it's the coolest way that the Lord designed our bodies.
Yeah.
It's like he actually gave us chemicals to actually show signals of like, hey, remember you're in fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we know.
We're aware of it.
Yeah, so we're aware of it. And it's
We
like,
can feel it.
I don't have to, good. Thanks for the signal. I don't have to take that bait.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's
and that goes back to what we talked about yesterday, the ability to feel.
Mm-hmm.
You're not defined by what you feel. You're not identified by what you feel, but we are allowed to feel it. And I believe that the reason that we are allowed to feel fear and pain and like rejection, all those things, is so that we can have compassion for people. It's relatable.
Yeah.
Because Jesus did.
Right.
He felt what humans felt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I mean, he was fully human, but so he felt it so he could have compassion of like, oh, I totally feel what you're feeling, but this is the antidote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Just
relatable.
Like Jake did with his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's like,
because you can't offer the antidote for it if you don't know what it is. You
uh-huh.
know?
Yeah.
If you don't know what the root of it is and where it's actually coming from, and siding with it, and it's like, that'll hunt. And
that's like there was a guy that I was listening to that I so valued. He said rejection isn't your identity; it's just an experience.
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, experience.
And it's separating the fact of like anything is just an experience. It's not your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And us having the awareness of like, hey, your identity isn't cancer patient, Jake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's like my identity is a son of God, a daughter of God. And fully knowing that with every cell and fiber of your being.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you are found and covered by God.
Yeah.
And then when you have this experience, you're like, wow, I get to have these emotions. Oh, I get to feel how this feels because I can break somebody out of it.
Right.
Oh, I'm so happy I'm having this experience. Thank you, God, for this experience because I am now fully loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
It is an honor and a privilege, once again, to have these experiences in this life that we live.
That's like the disciples when they got the crap beat out of them and they left.
Yeah.
And it was joyful.
Rejoicing
They were like,
in it, yeah.
Oh, dude, we got just jacked up. People beat the crap out of us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and look at Paul getting stoned and probably killed multiple times. And he just get right back up.
Yeah.
He was definitely killed.
And keep going. There's something, and it's about, the Lord is your rock. He's your foundation. And if you walk through any experience with him, you're going to come out with that as authority.
Mm-hmm.
And it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like, I appreciate this.
And there's a lot of those stories and stuff you hear about these major healings and testimonies of people where it's almost this like romanticized, artificial type of thing. But really it's like the meat of those circumstances and those experiences is like the revelation of how real God is
100%.
and how much he can actually do. And it's like once you click with that and realize that he showed you that in order for it to unlock other people, in a real way, not in a way of like, those books like 5 Minutes in Heaven and stuff like that. I'm not saying all those are bad, but a lot of it is romanticizing the illness over what the actual revelation or the healing of it was. You know what I mean? But that's just my 2 cents on that. But yeah, it's
healing.
good.
I kind of like that though, just to certain degrees, because it's like how much, even if you're romanticizing something, how much can people just hope? Like it pulls hope out in people.
Yeah.
Where I feel like we can actually have an expectation that God will move on our behalf, especially in healing.
Yeah.
Like even if, because you and I were talking about this the other day, right? When I had my seizures in 2018, there was like people prayed for me, and then I didn't have another one after they had prayed for me.
Right.
And but there was a sliver of unbelief, like this thing's still going to come back.
Right.
You know, and then it did come back.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it came back in 2021. I had another like mild panic attack. Actually, they were really bad, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tried to downplay
It's like
it.
leaving that door creaked allows room for it, you know?
Right. But if you actually, for me, it's been a learning of like, no, put your whole hope and expectation in
Right.
God that when he does something, you don't have to believe that it's going like that. Now you have to work it out in your own flesh.
Yeah.
You know, like I had that mentality of like, oh, he healed me. Now I have to maintain it.
Oh, yeah.
I have to maintain the healing because I know that's taught.
Right.
You know, like you can bring your sickness back because of your whatever.
Yeah.
But to some degree, it's like, I think it just goes back to connecting to God and letting him come breathe on every single aspect of your unbelief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Another like there was a kind of a string of some fears that had come out of the experiences and stuff that I had too. One of them was like relapse. It was like relapsing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the chances of that happening, particularly in my early 20s, which is what I'm in now. And so growing up, I was always kind of dreading my early 20s.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that they say that this is like one of the highest chances for something like that to like side effects of the chemo and stuff to happen.
I was going to ask you, did they tell you that it was going to be your early 20s?
Yeah, they told me early 20s.
That was the narrative.
Yes, early 20s is like when stuff like testicular cancer and stuff with your heart and bones, like stuff like that tends to come up in early 20s with kids that had it that young. And it took a while for me to for the Lord to just remind me what he did and know that that's not like his bloodline is outside of my genetics and all of the stuff that I experienced and even the medicine that was in me. It's like, that's got no effect on me.
Yeah.
And even a more recent revelation that he showed me a few months ago was another fear that I had was my offspring getting it
Oh,
or
interesting.
having it.
Yeah.
And that's something that would rip me up and make me not even want to get in a relationship with someone. And I still I carried that fear up until it wasn't as severe as it used to be, but it would still come up and I would still think that way. And I could say all day long like, oh no, the Lord's got me covered, like that, but it was always something.
Yeah.
And I prayed hardcore about it. Like it was one of those situations where I was really wanting the Lord to give me something on that specifically. Because I was getting married and I know that having kids is something that's probably going to happen within the next few years or whatever. And so I needed that to be clear. And the Lord showed me what he brought up that what he did in the hospital. And he told me, he said, your bloodline is clean. And it's like that's gone. It's not even, it's not even a part of, despite what the doctors say, despite what the science says, despite what the chemo did. It's like when you're connected to the source of life that is healing, that is love. He's a good dad. He took that out of me. He took that out of my blood. He took that out of every part of my being. That's not something that can even come up. And just speaking on the fear, it's like if you remain fearful of something, you are opening a door. You are allowing the bad side of that to come in. And so, yeah, I agree with what you were saying. Just full trust in the Lord, it closes all those doors. But yeah, that was a more recent, kind of cool thing that the Lord showed me in that too.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel, oh, go ahead.
Nope, go.
Too late. You do it.
No, there was something that you said earlier that I thought was such a good contrast. that, like, so you can either acknowledge that you're in fear,
Yeah.
or you can pretend like it's not there.
Yes.
Right. And I immediately had the thought that when you pretend that it's not there, or you try and believe, quote unquote, these are quotation marks, try to muster up your belief into saying, like, no, it's not gonna, whatever. Like, instead of acknowledging the pain, or acknowledging, if you don't acknowledge that pain, you're not creating space for God to actually speak into that,
Right.
Yeah.
to be delivered of it. You're actually withholding connection from God.
Yeah.
Like, you're withholding when you don't acknowledge. And I know that there's like a trend of saying, like, well, no, I'm in the faith. And it's like, well, no, you've shut the door.
Yeah.
Like, you've actually shut that thing down.
I think that is one of the most underestimated, like, superpowers that we have, is just honesty.
Yeah, acknowledgement
And honesty about it.
Yeah.
Because you can be of the faith and acknowledge and, like, recognize, like, no, I am scared.
Yeah.
Like, take it to him.
Yeah. Because then that gives him space to tell you exactly what he said, of like, hey, it's not in your bloodline.
Yeah.
You've then given him permission to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to acknowledge any pains, or you're not going to acknowledge anything, you're not going to get a response on it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you will.
Anything you bury will inevitably come up in one way or another.
It's coming back again.
So it's like, why not just deal with it?
Deal with it. And he already knows about it anyways. I mean, just deal with it.
So there,
gain understanding in it.
This isn't about healing. Well, it is, but it's emotional healing. I had a situation with somebody, and for whatever reason, this has been an ongoing thing for a very long time. And I keep taking it to the Lord, and I'm like, I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand. And I know that there's roots in me, and I know that there's roots in them, but I just don't understand. Anyways, what I thought was so funny was, like, once I finally acknowledged, like, oh, I deeply feel this way. And there were legitimate circumstances that made me feel this way. The Lord was like, see, that wasn't that hard, was it? But I had the thought of, like, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to leave. I'm going to, like, completely disconnect and whatever. And then it was this overwhelming thought of, like, it doesn't matter. It'll show up in another relationship.
Yeah.
If you're not going to deal with it here, it's going to show up somewhere else.
Right.
And because I'm knocking on this door, it's better to deal with it. And then he was like, hey, it wasn't that hard, was it?
Yeah.
Right.
Which I was having the dread of addressing something. The dread of, like.
Which is a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big things, a dread of, is, like, disappointment.
Yeah.
Like, a thing for me, I was so afraid to acknowledge that I was disappointed in something because I felt like I wasn't being faithful.
Right.
If I was disappointed. And I think that thing shows up a lot with healing, physical healings, is that we don't want to believe because we're so afraid of being disappointed.
Right.
Yeah.
We're afraid that he's not going to come through.
Yeah.
You talked about it last week, or in y'all's last podcast, about how people used to see that stuff all the time. And it's like, because there's a higher belief that it was actually going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
But it makes me think about, like, Mark 16. I've had so many debates with people, which, in my early years when I was like, so I graduated with a religion minor. So clearly I thought that I should. I thought I should debate everybody.
I'm not worthy to be in this room.
Oh, golly. Whatever. That's ridiculous. I'm going to throw up. But and it was from a Baptist college, so basically
we went to the same Baptist college.
We did, and everybody's better.
I don't need to be in this room.
God bless. Lord help us all. No, but people used to debate on this because in Mark 16, they claim that the second half of Mark 16 wasn't even originally in the original manuscript, so you can't take it for real. Which I find all of that's bogus.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put that out there. But in Mark 16:18, it says, and they will take up serpents, and if they drink anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. And they will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover.
Right.
The thing I love about that is, like, the Word of God, the living, breathing expression of Jesus, because that's who he is, the Word, said that. Those are his words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said they will recover.
Yeah.
So it's like our belief is like, do we believe that he said that if we pray, they'll recover? It didn't say miraculous, instant healing.
Yeah.
It just said that they will recover.
Mhm.
So it's like, even if we're having to go through the process like you had to, Jake, you
Yeah.
know, where even though y'all did decide to go the route of continuing with chemo and radiation,
Yeah,
the fact is he did recover.
he did. Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, that's what you
that's-
can bet on.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I think we are headed in the direction of the miraculous healings,
100%.
like all the
Oh,
time.
yeah,
And once
for
that,
sure.
you just think about what that would do when that starts happening on a normal occurrence. That's world changing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like even the fact that we have the mindset of, you know, being discouraged when we don't see that is a sign that there's got to be some growth there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when you pray for someone and it's not an immediate, you don't get to see the physical
Manifestation.
of it. It's like even if that happens and you get discouraged and are questioning the Lord, it's like that's proof right there that there's got to be some more understanding on it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because it's like it's again living from this plane,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
not living from the domain of heaven.
Yeah.
Because if you're praying for healing, all you have to do is wait on the Lord. Wait on the
Right.
Lord and let him show you how to
Yeah.
pray for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you release it, and then it will be done. Because it
Right.
says like anything that you ask, it will be done.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's outside of time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And so just because it took longer on the timeline,
yeah, the timeline, which is, what is that
mm-hmm.
to the Lord?
Yeah.
It's cool.
I've got two things. I've got a story, brief story, and then I want to go into the point about our belief and like believing fully when it comes to healing. I'll start there. So when I first started coming around, pursuing the Lord and everything, it just led me to question and change a bunch of things. A ton of mind changes, changed my life. Totally different person. I used to take allergy shots like 4 times a year. Whenever seasons would change, my allergies would flare up. I couldn't breathe out my nose. But then I had this understanding at one point of like, I don't need to depend on anything but you, and I'm going to like put that on you. You got to pull through for me.
Yeah.
And he did. And I've never had a shot since, and I don't have the allergies anymore.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Quick story there. That one, I own that. So, it's true,
Yeah.
Another thing with me, one of the things that lights me up more than anything is healing and seeing. I want so much to see limbs grow back. I want to see people raised from the dead. I want to see like blind people see.
Yeah.
And the Lord knows my heart in that. I think deeply I've always wanted that. But what he's done for me is I have dreams. I have so many dreams about healing. And they'll happen. And when I'm in the moment in that dream, it feels so real. I'm always crying in it because I'm watching it. I've seen bones snap back into place as if it's real. But one of my most recent dreams, and what he's doing is establishing belief in me. But one of my most recent dreams was at a compound, and there were 3 deaths, and the ambulances showed up. A lot of our Hoff people were there. But there were 3 stretchers on the ground. And the first one, I heard God say, "Go raise him." And I went over to him, and he was just dead. He just wasn't breathing. He was cold, So I'd have to look it up. It was something as simple as I said, "Hey, get up." And his eyes opened, and he got up.
Yeah.
Then I was carried over to the second body, and this one was in pieces. This is graphic. This one was completely in pieces, decapitated. And I said, "Hey, get up." And he was put back together before my eyes, and he raised. Then there was a third one. I was taken to, and this one was burnt beyond recognition, gone. And I was like, I can't. I said, "This isn't possible." And he said, "Tell him." He said, "Do the same thing." And I said, "Get up." And he formed back to life and got up. And what all of these dreams have done with me, and he wants this for everybody, it establishes the belief so that whenever it does, come within my sphere or within our sphere, it's like, oh, I know exactly what's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you fully believe it. And I think he's growing us, the ones that follow him. He's leading us and growing us in that.
It's like everything is completely possible.
Yes.
The only thing that's limited is your mind,
Right.
Yeah.
is how much you have placed a cap on it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you know this, but there's a book called The Dead Are Raised.
Mm-hmm.
And Saint Nick, you know, our beloved Saint Nick from Merry Christmas, they actually have historical stories of him doing that.
Yeah.
There were children in barrels that had been dismembered.
Yeah.
And he went and like rebuked the guy that did it because it was in a bar and they were going to serve the children for dinner that night because there was a famine in the town. Anyways, but he went and he rebuked the guy and then he called him forth and all the kids came back together and rolled out of these barrels.
Yeah.
And they came back alive totally fine.
Yeah.
It's like all these things are totally possible.
And there are these incredible, like that story, recollections of these things happening.
Yeah, that's not a happy, like that's not a fairy tale story.
No.
That's like real.
Yeah.
That actually happened.
It's real, but like look at that look at the limits that smashes on. It's like
100.
it does not matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the state is or what it looks like. It's like redemption, healing, life. It's here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like what caps our minds is seeing it in the physical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like if someone's got a headache or having a body aches, it's like, oh, that's easy to pray for somebody for that. But it's like if you see somebody laying on the ground with their arm chopped off or they just got in a car accident and they're unconscious, it's like there shouldn't be a difference there.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this can happen.
Right.
That's like I believe that if it rolls on your plate, you can take a swing at it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was driving the other day and I was trying to run home to grab something. We were about to have worship practice and there was a really bad car accident that just happened. I rolled up on it. I was the second person on the scene.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm not stopping. I got crap to do. And then the Lord was like, stop.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled over. Somebody was stuck inside their car. It was kind of a bad deal. Anyways, but the lady was like, I was like, hey, can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Because she was terrified and she was terrified about her back. And then the other lady had like, she had severed something in her neck in a previous wreck. So both both drivers were like in mad panic.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I got to pray over both of them. And the lady was like, one lady who couldn't get out of her car, we prayed over her back because she was really afraid she broke her back.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, it was just like, I started to step into fear like, well, this is silly afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the moment, I was like, this is freaking courageous. Like
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But then after the fact, it was like, oh, man, I wanted to see them get out of the car. You know, and then I started to like play on like, well, I didn't see the thing immediately happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept
Right.
asking the lady, I was like, hey, how do you feel? And she was like, well, honestly, the lady who had jacked up her neck and she started to have like severe pain down her arm. And so fear was just
Right.
all around her. But then when I prayed, she was like, yeah, I feel better. And then I asked her like 5 minutes later, she was like, honestly, I think the adrenaline is wearing off and I'm in a lot of pain. And so then I kind of let the disappointment settle on me, like, oh, she should have been miraculously healed.
Yeah.
But then the Lord brought me back to Mark 16. Like he brought me up on that wreck for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I prayed for them. So they're both going to recover.
Right.
They will,
It's going to be completely fine because I actually released the life over them.
Right.
And it won't be as it would have been had I not been on the
Yeah.
scene.
That's true.
Exactly.
It's not might, it's will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accepting that will and making that a reality.
But just knowing that when you step on the scene for anything, like you're fully empowered.
Yeah.
And just because it's not looking the way that you think it should in that very moment
Yeah.
doesn't mean that one day later it's
Right.
not going to be different.
I think
you know?
some of the maturity of it is getting to a point where in those situations you don't even expect a certain outcome.
Yeah.
You just trust and do it. you know?
Yeah.
100%.
And I think that takes away the even possibility of having any disappointment of it,
Mhm.
is not even perceiving what the outcome could be or
Mhm.
what direction it could go. It's like, no, it will. They will.
It just will.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
That's so good, though. I like that of like
Yeah.
removing your own filter
Yeah.
Yeah.
or even your own thought of how you think it should
Yeah.
go.
It's like, don't rehearse how you think this is going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be there
Right.
and know that whatever you're pouring out, that's the clear liquid water of heaven.
Right.
It's going to saturate them.
Yeah. And that really, it goes all the way back to love. It's like you impart that to that
Mhm.
person, you know,
Yeah.
whatever avenue it is, whether it's healing or praying for somebody.
Yeah.
It's like you're imparting his heart and his intention for that individual or whoever it is.
Yeah. Because I wholeheartedly believe his will is for everybody to be whole.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And there should be
Oh,
no
yeah, for
sickness.
sure.
There should be no death. There
That's
should
it.
be that is the real kingdom of heaven. That is the Garden of Eden.
That's what he wants.
The only way that death came in is when people partook of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
Yeah.
Death is the fruit of living by that tree.
Yeah.
And I think that we can live by the tree of life
Absolutely.
where death does not touch us.
Right.
Sickness does not touch us.
Right. He paid for that. We're just
Yeah.
walking as if something dead is alive, you know, as if that tree is
Mhm.
a thing. No, he dealt with that.
He totally eradicated that tree.
And think about this. What if these healings and people raising from the dead started to pop off everywhere? What if the media started pushing that out?
No
Yeah.
kidding.
That was the new real. That was the new normal of like, so whenever
Yeah.
anybody walks up on anything, it's like, oh, this person's going to be healed here.
yeah.
Anything. Think about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
rather than our response being, oh, it's cancer, or oh,
Yeah, like it turns into despair or
Right.
negative, you know.
right,
I took a speech class in the good college that I went to,
Mm-hmm.
and they used to say like if it bleeds it will lead. And it like that's the narrative. Like if it's bloody, if it's despairing, if it's like it will lead,
oh, okay,
it will lead the news, right? It will
Damn.
lead like it will be the headliners.
yeah,
true, yeah.
sure,
And it's like if you look, that's what the news media is portraying.
oh yeah,
So no wonder faith is hard for people
Yeah.
when that's their filter,
Right.
when that's their
Let's push.
source.
And people that don't have any foundation of anything, you know, in the Lord, it's like they'll just grasp onto whatever they're being told too,
Mhm.
or whatever they're hearing from the
Yeah.
majority of people that are saying it.
mm-hmm.
And it's like the people on the TV have to know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Google's got to know.
Yeah. Otherwise, they
said
wouldn't
that.
be on TV.
Right.
I said that to somebody today, one of my clients. I was like, whoa, you're having dinner with the guy that was just on TV? You must be famous. I was like, how do you hang out with people in that box? Is that like a special ticket?
Yeah, for real.
that's funny.
And just the fact that people prioritize that and kind of idolize
yeah,
that as well. Y'all brought up something in the last episode that I wanted to speak on specifically because it was getting me kind of fired up.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, y'all were talking about Western medicine and stuff like that. And which James and I were having a conversation about this before I even heard this part of it, but you mentioned like its purpose originally being good, and it like in accidents and stuff like that happens, it being useful to help people in like surgery and stuff like that for when like car accidents happen,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But now it's like any issue you have, that's the answer for
Yeah.
it. Even, you know, psychologically, mentally, physically. It's like if there's any kind of symptom or or effect that comes up from anything, it's like go to the doctor. That they have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, which is another thing y'all talked about, is like which is part of free will, is like our actions, the habits, the stuff that we choose to consume can obviously have an effect on us. And at that point, it's our fault. You know what I mean? Y'all were talking about eating a whole pizza and stuff like that. It's like if you're making bad health choices and you start having effects, negative effects with your body,
Yeah.
it's like that's where it's coming from, right?
It's not a demon.
Yeah, it's not a demon.
it's a pizza demon.
Yeah, pizza demon. But it's like we are created to be so whole
Mm-hmm.
that we don't need or require medication.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And you were talking about vaccine or, getting your allergy shots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I used to get the flu a lot. And when I turned 18, I stopped getting the flu shots and all the vaccinations and shots, and I never got it after that. And for the past, I used to take just take Zyrtec, like allergy medication, and just kind of be conscious of that. And like everyone would say, yeah, take Zyrtec, take it every day. I stopped doing that a couple years ago, like almost it's been a little over 2 years ago. Just stopped with medication in general, and I haven't gotten sick. I haven't gone to the doctor. I mean, there's been allergies and little stuff like that, but I was around multiple people that had COVID, didn't ever get it. And so obviously that's just,
Yeah.
I believe that we are supposed to be so whole that medicine is not even a thought or an option.
Absolutely.
And I know that's something that gets under a lot of people's skin. People I've talked to is like, people say, well, some people need medicine. It's like, I don't believe that.
Right.
I don't believe anyone needs medication. I think there are people that end up getting on it or taking it for, people that have psychological issues and stuff like that don't know any better. But that's not the way we were created to walk.
That's what it comes down to.
I think that there can be, okay, so I love that. I love that example of like psychiatrics, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big touchy subject where people are like, well, I do have a chemical imbalance and I do have this and I do have that. And I think that it can be good to a point while you deal with these other things. But then it will be time for you to step away from that medicine.
Yeah.
Like I think about, I'm going to blast my husband. It'll be okay. Right? So he got back from war and they put him on antidepressants. Well, there were some specific events that it was good that he was on this medicine. And then it came time when the Lord told him, stop cold turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a hard process for him, but there was so much value out of it that came from it because it was time, because he could deal with some of the traumatic things that had happened in his own person that he needed to kind of deal with.
Yeah.
And that thing helped for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I think of people that are like bipolar, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a time where you should be on that medicine to deal with other things that are going on, to bring your body back into balance. And then it will be time when your body is completely at balance that you can then address it. You know what I mean? Like I think we've just taken it to be absolutes. Like you always will have to be on medicine or you will always have to do this thing. And it's like, well, no, deal with the underlying causes of why you're having to be on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can address the body's reaction of you getting off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because everybody's body has reaction when you are.
Oh yeah. If you've been on something.
Withdrawals and
like I was talking to somebody else the other day and, like an antidepressant, right?
Yeah.
I guess, what's a good one? Lexapro?
Lexapro's a good one.
Good, yeah. So,
that's a good one.
Well, it numbs you.
Yeah.
It prevents you from having highs and lows, right? So you can't cry on it. You can't be sad on it, but you also can't feel the depths of happiness and joy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you just become basically an even kill of numbness.
Apathy.
Yeah. Which if you are having other things that you need to address, like heart issues, right?
Yeah.
I'll do heart issues in a second, but like you can deal with all these other health issues and then go address getting off of Lexapro.
Yeah.
But you can't fully deal with the traumas that your body is feeling until you get off of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it is numbing you.
Right.
And just like we had said earlier, your body holds memories. Your body.
Yeah.
And if your body can't get rid of those by crying, right? They're just staying in you.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you need to remove that. Or people that are extremely overweight, right? And they have congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
Well, you should probably get on a pill till you can start working out and eating healthy to bring balance to your system. And then you can go address that, getting off that pill.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, I think you can actually use wisdom in these things. It's just what we were talking about is like taking them as absolutes.
Yeah.
It's taking them as like, I will always have to be on this thing, but you were not created to be on it.
Right. Not
At
at all.
and not accepting that to be the only option to solve it. you know?
Totally.
And
Totally.
there is grace. And there's no condemnation in taking it if you are
Totally.
on something like that. But when
Yeah.
you do reach the level in yourself, your connection with the Lord, when you do kind of realize like, okay,
It's time.
it's time, or like, all right, what do I do here?
Yeah.
That's when you know. And
Yeah.
that's when you move forward with that.
Yeah.
There are people who have been on it. There are people who are on a truckload of medication and they didn't know. You think you're doing the best thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
You trust the doctor. Doctors have good intentions.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
They're good people. But when you get to this level of connection with the Lord, it's like, okay, what did you pay for?
Yeah.
What am I intended to be? How am I here? What's the fullness of what you paid for?
Yeah.
And then what are the practical things that I can start aligning my body with
Right.
to what you paid for?
Right.
Like movement. Like I should be moving every day
Yes.
because you created me to move.
Right.
Yeah.
Like our bodies were actually designed to move.
Mm-hmm.
So you can step into alignment of movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I heard somebody say once, you should move every single joint in your body at least 1,000 times a day.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
it does.
I mean, 1,000 times per joint.
Yeah.
feel a lot better.
Oh yeah. How often do you do like overhead, like shoulder raises? Do 1,000 of those and see how you feel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I don't know if anybody actually moves their shoulders
Right.
1,000 times a
I
day,
don't know.
Yeah.
or even 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like not being anti medicine completely, but knowing that there is a higher way of dealing with stuff in a permanent way, which is in the Lord.
Or there's also options.
Yeah, for
Like-
sure.
Like there's not one way to skin a cat,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you should ask the Lord, "Hey, what's the best approach here?"
Yeah.
Instead of just taking the track of
Yeah.
Western medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There could be 1,000 different alternatives.
Or just listening to what the physician or your doctor says.
Mhm.
Totally. Actually
Um,
listen to the Lord.
Yeah,
Right.
actually listen to the Lord on it. And if that's the route, you feel like you're supposed to go on, that's one thing. But
Yeah.
it's
but
just cool and encouraging and hopeful knowing that despite what issues or manifestations of stuff that we are dealing with as humans,
Yeah.
it's like there's always hope. And then there's always the Lord has us covered in
Oh, yeah.
every way,
Well, I'm going to even go into this because I think symptoms, right? So say you're exhibiting a symptom,
Mm-hmm.
that's just your body. What is it? What
It's
is
a
a
sign,
symptom?
yeah.
It's a sign. It's
Yeah.
a sign
signaling to something.
that something in your body
Mm-hmm.
is needing change,
Yeah. Right.
right? So it's a signal to say, hey, change something about what you're doing every day,
Yeah.
because what you've been doing every day has led to this.
Yeah.
And I know people can say like, oh, well, you got a virus and it's this. Well, your body was primed to catch a virus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this happened, and I'll call myself out. Bexley got a virus a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
right? And I live with this mentality. I'm like, okay, well, what can I change? How can I enhance my health? If
Mhm.
we're collecting viruses
Yeah.
and that's happening, then something needs to change.
Yeah.
Well, I asked the Lord, and I felt like He said, get her outside more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh. And then I started to think back, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have been indoors a lot. We've
Yeah.
been indoors a lot for the last month.
Yeah.
And just it never really like went on in my radar.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've been intentional to get her outside,
Right.
Yeah.
and the girl is like lit now.
I bet.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's just like simple things. All you have to do is ask the Lord.
Mhm.
Right.
Y'all were talking about the sun and stuff too. It's like if you never are in the sun and then you go outside and you're in the sun for a few hours, you're gonna get burnt by it.
Totally.
But it's like we were created to be in the sun. We were created to be outside, and like the vitamin D and all that stuff. It's like that's part of that's what we're supposed to do as humans. We're not supposed to be inside, be sedentary all day.
It's how our
Yeah.
body
And
was
so
created.
it's like when you're in
Right.
the sun, if you're in the sun regularly, it moves from a burn to like a tan, and at some point you can't get burned anymore. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's like if you're in the sun regularly,
Yeah.
Hmm.
you're not gonna burn.
That's like, I'm just going to make this as a blanket statement. Whatever you expose yourself to on a regular basis is how your body will manifest.
Right.
Yeah.
Exposure to the sun,
Mm-hmm.
exposure to fear, exposure to TV all night
Mhm.
long,
Uh-huh.
you're probably not going to sleep well.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like exposure. What are you exposing yourself
Mhm.
to?
Yeah.
Well, and here's another thing too. Our immune system, I believe it's fully far more capable
Oh,
than we have given it credit
for sure.
We can, I believe, and it's built to, it works that way. It's
Mhm.
built to kick these things.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to become dependent on a external source to keep our immune system up. COVID, I had COVID whenever that happened. What was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, June 2020.
Yeah. And I could tell in my body, I was like, oh, this is probably what everybody's been talking about. So I took one full day
This is
and
the
rested.
boogeyman.
I rested. I didn't take anything. I rested. And then the next day, there was also a dust storm that flew over here from Africa, some desert. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Yeah, I remember
The
hearing
air was
about that, yeah.
thick. I went and ran 5 miles in the dust storm
Mhm.
with COVID.
Yeah.
Out, I wasn't around people, but I kicked it. I rested it off, and then the next day was back to it. And my smell was still gone and
Yeah.
everything, but it's like,
Yeah, it's like one
We're-
one question is what are you exposing yourself to? And then it's like, what are you not exposing yourself to that you should be?
Totally.
and I'm
Yeah.
almost to the point where like I'll walk into a room full of bacteria.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm not scared of it.
Have you ever heard of that guy, John G. Lake? He was an old healer guy, and they actually have it recorded. They poured a live flesh-eating virus
Mhm.
or bacteria. I think it was bacteria.
Yeah.
A live flesh-eating bacteria on his arm,
Yeah.
and they recorded it, and they watched the bacteria die under a microscope.
Hmm.
Because he was like, "You can't touch me."
Yeah.
Like he was so full
Yeah.
of the Lord and so full of confidence. He was
Yeah,
like,
and the
"This
belief.
this thing can't touch me. Try it.
Mhm.
Watch it."
Yeah.
And they did. And
incredible.
they literally have proof of him
Yeah.
watching this virus die on him.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
That's what we're supposed to. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that
it.
level of confidence, that
Right.
level of faith of knowing who you fully are
Exactly.
and what your physical body is capable of.
Yeah.
It's not just spiritual.
You could
What is
stand in the fire.
You could literally stand
Right.
in the fire.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was listening to a shaman talk. Guys, I listen to some weird stuff sometimes.
I do too. It's okay.
But he was talking about people who walk through fire, right? So you've heard of people that they'll go on like meditation retreats or whatever. Have you
Oh,
heard
yeah.
of this?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And they walk through fire and
Yeah.
there's like coals. Well, he was talking about the mentality of how you have to approach walking through fire. And he said, if you walk up to fire and you think you're going to get burned,
Mhm.
you will get burned.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you walk up into fire and have he said a higher consciousness, but I think it's heaven's perspective.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
If you walk in with a higher perspective, it will not touch you.
Yeah.
If you think you're untouchable, you will
Right.
be untouchable.
I agree with that.
Which is the opposing side of that is fear.
Right.
Mhm.
It's like Peter
all it
walking
is.
on water. He knew he could because the Lord was standing out there
Because he
Yeah.
saw him.
and he stepped out.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
saw the Lord do it. So he was like, me too.
Yeah.
And then the moment something in the physical started happening, that's when it was, back down into the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
When
it's
Peter actually started observing things in the physical,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's when it
caused him to sink,
Yeah. There's certainly the higher way.
Yeah.
That's something to meditate on.
which is keeping your eyes on the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think practicing going out on a limb in
Mhm.
circumstances is good, and it's a limb that can't be broken,
Mhm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
even if you fall off of it, just like the situation with Peter, it's
Yeah.
like we're
The
pulled
Lord will
right
still
back up.
catch you. Yeah.
Yeah, and not being fearful of failing,
Yeah.
because there's no way to fail on
Yeah.
it.
That's a good thing to even ask him. Like, show me the higher way. Show me these things. Show me your way in this, in anything. Invite him into your life, into every aspect of your thought life, your physical life, all of it. And he'll show you.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's exciting what is ahead,
Mm-hmm.
what's
Yeah.
open to us.
I got to circle back to your dream because that is flipping credible. I love that the Lord was showing you that of like, hey, this is what is possible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And to me, like the three,
Of
just
course.
it's so dope, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's progressive.
Right.
Like, I think that even as you like step out into healing and praying for people, I think it's progressive. Like, you will see just one person who was dead, then raised to life. It's like, that's the first layer.
Yeah.
The second one is, hey, you'll start to see things being assembled.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'll see people raised. And then the third one is like the thing that looks completely indistinguishable from what it was supposed to be, being able to call that thing completely to life.
Yeah.
It's like physically, but also, you know, just spiritually, like there's so much there,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
the power that we carry.
Yeah.
And I love that it was in a compound.
Yeah.
Because that to me is community.
Yeah.
It's not a cult.
It was a community.
It's a community. It's a community thing that you can walk with other people in the light
Yeah.
and call things literally that are dead, bring them to life.
Yeah.
And you do it collectively. I don't think that there is a hierarchy. There's not these elite people that operate in healing, you know, like, it's like, oh, well, he's really special, gifted. And it's like, dude, it's all available for all of us. That's why you were in the compound.
Yeah.
You were in the community.
The moment you think that way, you're disqualifying yourself.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of how we're supposed to function.
Yeah. It's for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
All of it is.
It is for everyone.
We can just step out on the branch and try it.
Yeah.
And actually pray. And if you're like, man, I don't even know how to pray for healing. I don't know how to pray for anybody.
Yeah.
You know, because Zach said this to me the other day. We were just talking about it because he's had some crazy stuff with healing. Like, it kind of hurts my mind sometimes because I'm like, that's weird. He like healed a guy in a dream and then the guy actually got healed.
Yeah.
That was a whole thing.
It's incredible.
But, and Zach hadn't even talked to him, like didn't even know what was going on with him. But anyway, so it's like, crap, what was I saying? I got distracted.
Even if you don't know how to pray for healing.
Oh, yeah. Because we were talking about like the random verbiage that people use. Like they'll listen to somebody else and then go copy like Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus, Jesus, heal, Jesus, heal. Like we Hyundai Shundai things. But if you actually just close your eyes, not saying you have to, but like slow your mind, slow your person, and just be open. The Lord will give you the literal words to say. The Lord will give you a picture. The Lord will give you something that is actually from heaven that will break
that's good,
the healing that is needed.
It's like pick up your mat and walk.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dream you were having, it was just like, get up.
And that was imparted to me. That imparted to me some serious peace and comfort of like, it's that simple.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's
It is that simple.
That's really good.
Get up.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
not feeling like you have to try to reach for something.
Yeah.
Or get in the right headspace. It's like we're called to function in a way that we're constantly in that.
Yeah.
To where we don't feel like we're striving to receive.
Yeah.
Or to get something.
Yeah.
From it.
It's just make space.
Yeah. And I like that. See what he says. He may just like tell you to do something, like poke the person, or it's just, you never know.
Yeah.
But it is simple.
Yeah.
It's simple, and it will be the key that unlocks.
There's not a formula.
There can't be. And you can't copy somebody else.
Right.
The way that James heals people will not be the same way that I heal people.
Yeah.
The words that James get will not be the same words that Marlia gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Jake. Sorry.
No, you're
I was
good.
just staring at James.
That's another beautiful
the
thing.
Brother of Jake.
Yeah,
James.
the brother of James. But yeah, that's another beautiful thing is like our personalities and the interests and the desires of our heart and stuff like that. It's like the Lord knows that, and He speaks to us in individual ways that are unique to our person that He created us to be. And even the dreams and the visions and the ways in which He speaks to us. It's like when you really think about that, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
He cares about us each on such an individual level.
If you knew how truly powerful and special you were in the kingdom, you would not want to copy anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you would know how locked and loaded you are.
Yeah.
And how the flavor of your person can radically change the people that come across your path.
Right.
Because it's so orchestrated. Everything is orchestrated so beautifully if we slow our lives down.
Yeah.
If we slow our lives down and actually be present in the day.
Yeah.
Because, I think you can get into the routine of just like, well, I've got to get this task, this. Once I can knock this out, then I can enjoy my evening. It's like,
Yeah.
well, why are you chasing another thing
Yeah.
Right.
instead of just being here?
Or having prerequisites to feel peace or be in the present, you know?
Elaborate what you mean by that.
I just mean like feeling like you have to do A, B, and C before you can rest or be in a spot of connection, you know?
Give a practical example of that.
I mean, people that are trying to connect to the Lord and they feel the only way to do that is to read 5 minutes of scripture a day and sit, you know, get on their knees in their bedroom and stuff like that for however long, just stuff like that it obviously can be good, but it's like we're called to be connected without any kind of things or works or stuff you have to do beforehand.
That, and also on the trail of like last Thursday, of moving so much and thinking like later I'll have time to connect and I'll have time to focus. Like later I'll be able to, but right now I'm like locked in. It's like, well, where are you right now? Where are you right this second?
Yeah.
You mean when our day was so long?
Yeah.
Mine and yours.
That was it was fun.
It literally
It was super fun.
Do you
but
realize
it was,
that was like from 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m.?
Yeah.
That's how long.
Nonstop.
We had a very long day.
Is that the high school day?
Yeah.
That was
Some cool stuff came
artist.
out of that.
Yeah, artist day, all of it.
Yeah.
Nonstop.
But I'm going to hit that again. It was cool. Like you could go with the mentality of like, this is going to be the longest day of our lives,
Yeah.
which I started out that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I reset.
Yeah.
We reset.
Right.
You did good. You were never in that space, but of just get present.
Yeah.
Get present and like love on people
Yeah.
Mhm.
instead of just like, oh my God, when is 3 p.m. coming so I can breathe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fruitful.
Yeah. And even if you are like in day to day, like say you just work at your computer desk all day long, right? And you have no personal interaction with
Mhm.
people, you can be so present with the Lord
Mhm.
that He'll bring things to your mind that you can actually intercede for people
Yeah.
behind the scenes that actually could break something open for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not always just sowing. Sometimes a lot of it is like actually giving life to other people that you're
Mhm.
around, but sometimes it actually is in the closet.
Right.
It's in the secret place where you can actually intercede and break things open for people.
Yeah.
And then you don't even have to tell them about it. You'll just see it happen later and be like, "Dang, I did that."
Yeah. That
Yeah.
can be, and you can see that as I'm in my little box, or you can see it as a great strength.
Oh yeah.
It is being in that space.
But it's
even alone.
knowing how incredibly powerful intercession is.
Yeah.
Knowing the strength of actually being able to pray for people and pray life and their purpose and their destiny. And
Right.
like things shake when you pray for people
Mhm.
Yeah.
in what the Lord is showing you about them.
Right.
You know, like you can actually catch the vision of heaven for people's lives and pray that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool when it happens.
Yeah. And here's one. Here's a good practice. If someone's eating your lunch or if someone has done something to you, see them through that lens. That's another one. There are
Yeah.
people that, that I've worked with before that just get on my nerves. And I'm like, obviously I can sit in that, or I can say, well, it's fun to explore the fullness of who that person really is.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Seek that out and practice that. I don't know. That's
That's
something
like
else you can do in your,
That's like the Lord told me, the Lord told me, He called me out on this, that I'm really good at seeing the weak points in people. But that's the unrefined thing within me because I really have the strength to find the strengths in people.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're always able to find the negatives of people, try finding all their strengths
Yeah.
Mhm.
and talk to those things
Yeah.
Yeah.
because that's going to be the most beneficial.
Right.
I think
Right.
a lot of our negative perspectives of things and of people
Mhm.
is actually the direct contrast of what our destiny is.
Yeah.
Like what we're actually called and created to do.
Yeah. I had a lady one time. I don't want to be too specific. Pretty rude to me. Didn't like me from the get-go. Pretty rude. And I was like, dang, like whatever, It's like, that's just too much. Like, why would you be that way?
Mm-hmm.
And then I made the conscious decision, like, God, show me this lady. Because it was kind of bugging me, just like, could have retaliated. But
And you probably would have been right. You probably would have been quote unquote right and justified.
yeah, I probably
because
had
of-
the right to do it.
totally
to
because of how
retaliate.
mean she was.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, and disrespectful, which is fine. But anyway, I was like, well, Lord, show me her. Because this had been a practice of mine, especially walking through forgiveness, of seeing that person for who they are. But I was like, show me this lady. I'm like kind of curious to see who she really is. And he showed me this lady as if she were like my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it like hit me hard. And I was like, oh, I can't fully describe it. But he showed that to me, and every now whenever I saw that lady afterwards, calling her by her name, and it's become friendly, you know.
Yeah, you
and
can
there's
actually
people
be.
have a lot of pain and things going on you don't fully understand.
Yeah.
But our job is to see people through the testimony of Jesus
Mm-hmm.
for who they really are.
You laid down your rights
Right.
in that moment. You laid down your right to be justified in it. You laid down your right to be offended.
Right.
You laid down every right
Mm-hmm.
and went for who she really was. And you
Yeah.
chose to live by that reality. And that is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is what will sow the seeds of the kingdom. And
Absolutely.
then she could come back into her right mind,
Yeah.
versus like projecting the pain that she was on you.
It causes a glitch in the reality of this world.
Oh, yeah. Right in the matrix.
It messes it up.
Yeah.
It really screws it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Well, Jake, do you want to leave us with any great and home-hitting, home-run thoughts?
I don't know. I'm thankful that y'all asked me to do it, and it's been cool. I think the takeaway from all this is just trusting fully in the Lord, that He's got our backs, and that He's always the answer beyond anything we can see in the physical, whether that's in regard to physical, mental, emotional healing, anything. He's got us covered. And step out on a limb and try it, and it'll work.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That's good.
I want to encourage the listeners. I just kind of have this sense, like, if you have felt disappointed in not seeing something physically manifest, like if you've been praying for healing for a long time for something and not seeing any of the breakthrough, I encourage you to take the disappointment to the Lord, and I encourage you to actually ask Him to speak into it. And just know that even if it's not on this timeline yet, it will be, and you will see the hand of the Lord come through on your behalf. And so I just want to encourage our listeners with that. If there's anything, any disappointment,
Right.
you can bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because
And
I feel like I feel just a sense that He really wants to speak into disappointments and pain,
Right.
Yeah.
especially in the arena of physical healings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And acknowledging it,
Mm-hmm.
like we were talking about.
Yeah.
Just the more you familiarize yourself with something, the more it will make sense to you too. Like the more you try to understand something. Yeah, it's good.
And this is another one I had when I was on my little jog the other day. It does go in line with disappointment. But if anyone listening is maybe experiencing disappointment that they've missed out on something, or that they've wasted time, they've wasted years even pursuing something or being somewhere, I want to encourage you that that's not true. Reach out, because God can absolutely redeem any amount of time at any age, whoever you are, wherever you're at. I promise you, He can redeem all of it and bring it up to where you are now. And you can have new life. I felt that. So.
All right, guys. Thank y'all so much for listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
We really value our listeners. So,
And Jake, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for
Definitely.
letting me.
Oh yeah. See you next time.